Hey guys, this video is going to be a response to a request I had from someone who found my no-weld grinder sander video on YouTube. They wanted some more detail on the tracking block assembly, so I wanted to give them a response to that and give them some more detail and hopefully answer any questions that they had. And this video is specifically for mosbysmen. And again, if I don't answer all of your questions or fill in enough detail for you, please feel free to send me a comment in the box below or another personal message. And I'll be more than happy to make an additional video or do what I can to answer your questions for you. To start this video off, I'm just going to give an example of the tracking while the grinder is on, both left and right, just so you get an idea of how well it tracks as well as how far it tracks. Alright, that was the basic tracking there. Go ahead and remove that belt so we can see what we're looking at. As you can see, it tracks left and right about equal distances. I could probably have tracked right a little bit more. I am limited on tracking left, however, by my tracking arm. The farther left I track, the closer I get to cutting into this arm, which you may be able to see. I have done a little bit here. I have cut into that bolt from tracking to left once or twice. If you track to right, the belt's simply going to fall off. But it does track very well, very consistently. Adjustment is easy. And you really should never have to track more than 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch anyway for most applications. As you can see, I was getting about 1/2 inch from left to right on my belt tracking. This is the front of the tracking assembly. This would be the tracking arm, the tracking block, and the tracking wheel. We also have the tracking knob here, which I just used an eye bolt because they were cheap. They were available for $1. I have a pretty decent knob that I can adjust fairly easily. Here's a left view of the tracking assembly. You can see the pivot point here attached to this rear post on my no-weld grinder. We then have a 1/2 inch threaded rod coming off of the rear of that to hold the spring tension. And pivots very well, works very well. I do have some washers in behind the spring just to hold it a little bit higher off of this bolt and give me just a little bit of added tension, as well as surface area to contact the spring so that it's not kinking it as much as it would had I just used a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch threaded bolt. So that works very well. It also keeps it in this particular setup with the larger washers on the side. That keeps this spring from being able to fall left or right. As you can see, the tracking block itself, which is this portion here, is made out of a piece of square tube. It's the same size tube that the tracking arm was constructed out of. And the way that was constructed, I just notched the tube out, as you can see, so that the 3 dimensions on the front, the left side, and the back are equal. The right side was just run a little bit long. And that's what gives me the tab to contact my adjustment screw. You can see the pivot points right here. There's a bolt running through the brackets all the way through the tube, through to the bracket on the back side. I do have some greased washers or bushings in between the brackets and the tracking block, just for some added ease in the pivotability there, if that's a word. I then have the tracking wheel, which I purchased from Beaumont Metalworks, bolted directly through the tracking block itself with a 1/2-inch bolt. And this is offset with some bushings and some washers as well to give some clearance from the tracking block. And it does pivot freely. Again, the tracking knob here is simply just a 3/8 threaded eye bolt. One thing I might recommend in the future if I were to change this is using something with a little bit tighter of threads. I believe these are 16 threads per inch. Just a standard 3/8 eye bolt. If you had maybe used if I had maybe used tighter threads, it'd give just a little bit smoother tracking. Although it's not completely necessary, it might be a little bit easier to track when this is under tension as well. Although right now it's definitely tolerable, really no issues there. As you can see, the brackets are bolted all the way through the tracking arm. The reason for that was I didn't want to have to deal with trying to tighten up the nuts inside the tube, so it's much easier just to run them all the way through. Another thing that's important to note is that the brackets are offset all the way to the right of the tracking arm tube there. And the reason for that is this does need to be offset to a certain degree from the tracking tube so that it can pivot to the right, as you can see, as well as to the left. If these were centered on the tube, then the space would not be here and you would not be able to angle your tracking to the right. You would not get very good tracking if you needed to track your belt to the right. I did center this hole on the tracking tube. If you did feel like you needed a little bit more give to the right, you could offset that hole a little bit more. And that would simply increase your ability to angle this to the right while not sacrificing any angle to the left. And I believe that's really the majority of details there. If I didn't mention it, I did end up triple nutting this with a lock nut or a lock washer as well, just in an effort to keep that at a fixed pressure for the pivot, as well as to keep these nuts from backing off. So it really helps to minimize any play in my tracking arm. I do have a greased bushing in between these as well, similar to the ones I have here, to keep that pivoting as freely as possible. And that really helps with tracking as well. If this starts sticking and you're not getting a maximum transfer to the spring tension, you will have tracking issues. So please keep that in mind. The least amount of friction that you can have here is the best. And similar to this as well, that'll help you really have some precise tracking if this is pivoting freely. And as you can see, just by tightening the bolt, we can pivot it to the left. By loosening it, it will pivot to the right as well. Obviously, when this is under tension of the sanding belt, I won't have to adjust this by hand. It'll just adjust itself. Also, make sure that this is offset enough from the top as well. Otherwise, you won't be able to adjust it as much either way, as these corners will come in contact with the tracking arm too quickly. So that's just kind of a detailed view. I double nutted this as well to keep a fixed pivot pressure as well as keep those from backing off on accident. So that's the video on my tracking block assembly. I hope it answered the majority of your questions. Hopefully you can figure out anything that you had concerns about from viewing this video. If you need some more details, just feel free to ask. I'll make another video or I'll answer your questions directly. But that's the tracking assembly for the no weld grinder sander. Thanks for watching.